And we are live, Mike.
We are live.
Yes, sir.
Wow, that is a problem right there with that switch. Oh boy. I need to replace that. Good thing I got a new Optic, right? So, we have anybody on right now? Wow, we have some viewers on. Looks like we might have 3, 4, 5, 6 on. We'll give them just a second to jump on. I've got all my tools and firearms and optics laid out here. I'm kind of excited about this. So, all right, folks, we're going to kick this off. I don't know how many live viewers I have right now. Of course, we are live on several Facebook pages. Welcome to the Tuesday afternoon live stream. My name is Mike Seeklander. I'm going to be your host and your tour guide, of course. Today, we're talking about optics. We're talking about selecting an optic. We're talking about picking a dot size or reticle pattern. We're bringing an expert on the show. Our second guest ever, Buck Hawley, owns C&H Precision Weapons. Great guy, former Marine, and someone that knows a few things about mounting an optic. Literally, he's built his business around that. And I'll let him tell you more about his bio here in a second. Of course, before we get into it, safety is always important to me. So if you're handling a firearm of any kind, please make sure it's unloaded. So if you've got your carry gun or you got any guns there, please unload. I've got several firearms on the table. I've already checked those and unloaded those. If you're going to grab a gun with an optic mounted on it, please make sure you have a safe dry fire area. All dry fire rules apply. All safety rules apply. If you're not willing to comply with those, I have to ask you to leave the live stream on. Of course, hey, Tim Herron is on. Oh my gosh, Tim Herron. I got my comments down on the bottom of that screen. Vincent is on, Salvo. Tim Herron is actually going to be on a show. What are we doing, Tim? May 16th or something like that? Tim Herron, one of my alumni, one of my favorite guys in the whole wide world. Chris is on, IDPA. And by the way, Chris just says shared. So if you haven't clicked the share button, do me a favor and click that share button. Also like. What Facebook likes to see is people liking videos. So when you're on a live stream and everybody clicks like, Facebook says, hey, I'm going to show this to more people. Of course, we're getting into this. A few things before I bring Mr. Buck on. Number one, the weekly programming is up. I didn't promote it on Livefire yet, but we are live with this week's drill. It's pretty unique. This week, we're working the strong hand and the support hand presentation. And today's show, of course, is about optics. But if you are shooting with an optic in carry optics divisions or you're carrying with an optic, it's critically important that you work on that presentation. That ability to present a gun with an optic on it is a memorized position. So this week's programming drill will allow you to do that. If you're a Livefire member, send me a message, give me a follow on Livefire. If you're not a Livefire member, you got to check it out. We're going to float a QR code by. I'm telling you, it is one of the greatest training resources you're going to find. We've got a full social feed. We've got a logbook function. We've got a built-in part-time function. It's incredible. The feedback has been fantastic. We've got some cool stuff coming up that I can't tell you all of the details about, but we're doing a few things on a group feature, an open social post as well. So get on there, give me a follow, and then start to run the drills. Check out that weekly programming. For those of you that don't know, we do weekly programming. So every week I'm posting a purpose design drill for you to learn from. So here, let's not delay this any longer. I'm going to read part of this bio, then we'll bring Buck on. Buck Hawley is an Alaskan native with a passion for family hunting and fishing. After serving as a U.S. Marine intel analyst for 9 years, Semper Fi, Buck. I'm a former Marine as well. He spent the next 13 years as a contract doing various things. And then eventually in 2012, formed C&H Precision. Let's bring Buck on the show and let's let him tell more about his company and all of the things he's done. Welcome to the show, Buck. How are you today, man?
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the invite. I'm very happy and pleased to be here. To all those that are currently live and all those that will see this for the future on all the different platforms it'll be on.
Well, so I have to tell a story, and I think you and I we may have crossed paths at the SHOT Show. I don't even know when in the past, but when I really got to know you was when I was shooting a Glock. I was getting ready for a class and shooting a Glock 17, and I had the good old Glock MOS plate system on. And about the time I ate the second optic, like literally, shooting that gun, doing my drills, boom, gun goes off. And the next thing I know, the optic is not on the handgun. The optic is nailing me in the nose or the eye. One hit me near the nose. Thank God for safety glasses. But literally, I ate two optics before we had a conversation. And I think your specific message to me was, hey, Mike, don't let a third one hit you in the face. Send me your gun. We'll put a plate on it. We'll put a proper mounting solution on the handgun. And that's how we actually met and got to know each other pretty good. So tell us more about that and your company, CNH Precisions, and some of the things you do.
Very briefly, I had a short career as a U.S. Marine, 9 years. Very formative time of my life. I'm glad I went through it. I encourage any young person to seek out a career in the military as their first job. A lot of valuable life lessons. But it's not, I'm going to say it's not what defines me. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. The next 13 years I spent working in various different positions on weapon systems and counterterrorism teams and counter IED, etc. Really, really fun, really cool job. Got to do a lot of cool things, but it certainly led to the demise of my marriage because I was gone all the time. And I felt that I had a calling when my third child was born that I needed to do something that was fun, innovative, and in line with my interests. Hunting, shooting, fishing, those are my interests. And me and a former partner started CNH Precision in LaBelle, Florida, just outside Fort Myers. And our focus was precision rifles for long-range precision hunters, long-range precision shooters, those of you that shoot PRS or NRL. And we also made historically correct U.S. Marine Corps sniper rifles, M40A1s, A3s, A5s, A6s, you name it. We did that very successfully. I'm not going to say we did it very successfully. We did it successfully enough that we were able to feed 2 families. We did that for several years. But I got a late night phone call once and from a really good friend, a dear friend at Glock, who knew of my innovative, very quick prototyping skills. And he he sent me a message about this new thing, this Glock moss. And we both laughed. We were like, what does Glock come up with this time? And he said, it's a moss. And I said, like the moss that grows on the tree? And he goes, no, it's modular optical system something. And they requested that they were getting ready to go to SHOT Show in 2015. And they had enough pistols and they had enough RMRs, but they did not have enough plates. And I was called upon to very quickly and rapidly make some extra plates for marketing activities, for demos, etc. So, when I got the call to make 25, instead of making 25, I made 50. I said, if Glock is doing it, I bet there's something behind it. Glock never does anything unless it's going to be an absolute raging success. I made 25 of them, and it probably took 6 months to sell 25, and then I ran out, and then I made 50. It probably took me another 6 months to sell 50. Fast forward, that was in 2015. Fast forward 7 or 8 years later, we now average on a weekly basis. We now make somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 mounting plates per week. Per week. So if there's any, so here's where I will hang my hat after this conversation and any of your viewers. If you want a bare knuckle education on growing a small business into a behemoth and all of the nightmares, the very few successes, but you want to know all the nightmares of growing a small business into a little bit of a behemoth and all the lessons learned, you come here, I'll give you an MBA education that will rival any from these Ivy League schools. I mean, I've learned some lessons that I can help other business guys. I don't care what business you're in. If you're in lawnmower,
Yep.
if you're making pistol parts, we have learned a lot. Scaling from making 25 or 50 a year to 4,000 to 5,000 a week comes with numerous problems, numerous headaches. But we're very proud of what we did. We've got a couple patents, and we've helped out thousands, hundreds of thousands of people just like you keep an optic on a pistol. And we're very happy with our line of business. And it's also allowed me to spend most of my free time hunting now, and I get to venture into other things like making our own brand of red dots.
Yeah. So your company is super successful, and I'm going to take just a second to welcome all of the folks that are watching us right now and ask you to share and like, and of course do all the same thing. I know I got a bunch of my members on now. Pat Cahill's on, coin number 2446. My mom is on watching you right now, Buck. We've got Will Rhodes, 2269. Of course, these are all American Warrior Society coin members. I know we got some Li-Fi members, probably some ACSS members, IDPAs in the house. Juan Rodriguez. Hello, Ron. How are you? Steve Miller, of course. Gerald Robertson. How are you as well? So welcome to the show, folks. If you're watching us, my name is Mike Seeklander. I've got Buck Holly on. We're talking about both selecting and optic, and we're going to talk about Buck's new line of optics, which I saw first at SHOT Show. And I actually have them in boxes right here. I haven't even unboxed them. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things. Then Buck is going to school us on properly mounting an optic. So, Buck, let me start off with the question. In terms of selecting an optic for a handgun, whether that's a defensive handgun or a competition handgun, what are the principles that you find are will make you successful in that selection process?
Well, number one, first and foremost, if you're searching around for an optic that you're going to put on your handgun, and I'm not afraid to name names, but if you're paying less than about $275, $250, if you're paying less than that, chances are you are getting fresh off the boat, made in a very low quality factory offshore somewhere. There's numerous brands that probably don't even deserve to be on. They're not even safe to put on an airsoft gun. So take the top 5 brands. Let's just start at the top. Trijicon, Holosun, Leopold, Aimpoint. Who else can I name it? And Vortex. You know, any of those name brands, those quality name brands that have been around for a long time, you know that they have a solid warranty program. Start with those. Ours, okay? Then your next decision is, what kind of handgun do I have? You know, do I have a Glock 43X? Well, you know, I wouldn't suggest putting our competition optic like a Delta Point Pro or an SRO, a big window, the Romeo 3 Max. You know, it probably would look really cool, and you'll have a HD size window on there. You know, like you probably have a 70-inch TV that you watch golf with at home. But just because you have a 70-inch TV doesn't mean you put it in the front of your F-250 so you can watch YouTube while you're driving down the road. So first you're going to decide, what size pistol do I have? Ultra compact, compact, or competitor size. And then each of those premier manufacturers, they all make an optic in that size category for that size pistol. Now, we did something special with our line of optics, and I'm sure you and all your viewers know that the naming conventions for optics are extremely difficult to decipher, even if you have the secret decoder ring.
Yeah.
I like to pick on Holosun. I like to pick on them all. But in Holosun, there's a 507K and there's a 507C for your first-time buyer of a red dot that goes into a gun store and probably talks to a 21-year-old gun nerd. Bless his heart, he's working out there. But or maybe you can't even get anybody to help you, and you're looking at the different optics. One says 507, the other one says 507. They must both be the same, right? Maybe they different buttonology, but no, they're significantly different. So we took the approach. We've taken every lesson we've learned from the last 8 years in being in the pistol optic business. How do we oversimplify everything down to the naming convention? If you have a pistol that you primarily carry for everyday carry, the industry standard name is EDC. So it's a 43, a 48. Smith & Wesson's got the several of them, the SIG P320 or the 365. You know, what I call the EDC, the everyday, easily concealable. What optic would you put on it from C&H? You're going to put the optic that's called the EDC. Makes sense? It's for EDC carry, so we call it the EDC. Now, I think it's the appropriate size. Now, the RMR isn't much bigger. Neither is the Holosun 507C. Same. So we just called it the EDC XL. So our EDC XL is similar in size and shape to an RMR and a 507C. Very good for concealed carry. Not quite as small as the EDC.
Sure.
But it's appropriate size for your 19, your 26, your 27, whichever.
Yeah. So before you go too far down that line, because I want to actually unbox the optics that you sent me and talk about your models a little bit. You've built plate or mounting solutions for every single optic out there. You probably had handguns with every single optic out there. You probably own and shot all those optics. Talk to me about dot size and brightness. For me, I always, for defensive use specifically, I would say bigger and brighter is oftentimes better. You're going to pick that up faster. And I'm not opposed to a precise dot. So talk to me about optic reticle size and brightness. Talk to me about closed emitter versus open emitter. And I think you have a closed emitter as well. Like I said, I'll show you my optics on the table. What are your thoughts on dot size, dot brightness, closed open emitter, stuff like that?
Well, I believe there's only one manufacturer, and I believe it's Trijicon. I could be wrong. I'm sure one of your guests might ping in here and say, but I think there's only one manufacturer that makes a red dot with a 1 MOA dot. And I have one just on my desk just to show people how small a 1 MOA dot. Even when you crank it up to 10 power, it's hardly visible unless it's dark. So I don't know why they came out with a 1 MOA dot. My personal favorite is a 3 MOA dot.
Yep.
Almost every company makes something in that 2.75 to 3.5 MOA dot. I personally think it's the perfect size dot for me, along with the controllable adjustable buttons. We are releasing a model later this year that will have an auto dimming feature, which is really good. We released that at the behest of several large law enforcement agencies that don't want buttonology. They just want to pull it out. It'll have shake awake and come out. And if they go from bright sunlight outside on a porch into a dark hallway, it'll dim down because you get this starbursting effect. Mm-hmm. The 6 MOA dot, that's about as big as they get. Again, I can use it. I just find myself having to dim it down quite a bit. My personal favorite, just for me, is a 3 MOA dot in the middle section. If it's dark outside, there's not too much blossoming. When it's really sunny, I can still pick it out because I know where the dot's going to be when I present my firearm. So, dot choices, again, if you're a little bit older, a little bit slower, a little less eyesight, bigger is better. 6 MOA dot, you can turn that thing down. But I prefer the 3 MOA. Now, as far as enclosed optics, this is a massive trend that was honestly started with the Aimpoint Micro T1. You saw a lot of users as the RMR left the gas gun and entered into the pistol market 10 years ago. Prior to that, competitive shooters, Hilton Yam, former FBI guy down in Miami, he was running an Aimpoint Micro T1 or some little enclosed emitter on a mount on top of a 1911. with great success. So red dots on pistols has been around for like 15 years, really.
Yeah, and folks, if you're watching right now and you're hearing closed emitter versus open emitter, I know we're going to talk more about Buck's optics, but we're talking about typically one piece of glass or two. So in a closed emitter, there's a front piece of glass that I guess the laser or whatever projects onto, and a rear piece of glass that projects the emitter and the insides of those areas, which tends to be potentially more robust. It keeps water from being inside it and stuff like that. So
yeah. So the common problems that people associate with open emitters is because there's only one piece of glass in here. I mean, I can touch it from both sides, right?
Sure.
So the common thread that people like to discuss is you're a police officer in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Canada,
Yep.
right? And you're in your warm cruiser. Everybody's experienced this with their eyeglasses, sunglasses, whether they're getting out of a hot car into or a cold car into a warm climate and your glasses fog up, or vice versa. There have been some thoughts about your optic lenses fogging up. With the closed emitter, it's less of a problem, they say. Never personally experienced it myself. They've talked about, well, I'm joking, but you know, your pistol's in your holster. What if you dropped a French fry in there and got greasy and smudgy, right? Well, it's really hard to stick your thumb in here and clean it out without further just spreading the goo around. But with an enclosed optic, if you're sitting there eating a jelly donut or a French fry and you drop something on the back, you can just wipe it off.
Yeah.
Okay. That might happen sometime. It's not probably prevalent. The other one is, I love to hear this story. I'm fighting this perpetrator. We're rolling around in the snow and the mud, and my optic gets impacted with mud or snow or crap, right?
Right.
Well, guess what? I hate to tell you, but if you're rolling around with a perp in the mud and in the snow, one or both of these lenses are going to be covered in schmegma, and it's going to be really difficult, if not hard, to see through it too. So,
yeah. Well, I would guess if you're rolling around with that perp, you're probably at a distance where the optic is not effective or not even necessary. We're talking about contact shooting, point shooting, or whatever else. And of course, you know, Buck, when people select an optic for a handgun, that's one of the things they should consider is why we're selecting an optic for a carry handgun or a duty handgun. And I think, you know, if I were to look at my classes across the board, 3 years ago, 30% of the shooters had an optic on a handgun. Now, 60% of my students in any given sign-up class probably have an optic on their handgun. And I would bet in 3 years, 80% on an open enrollment class will have an optic on a handgun. And you know, you make an open emitter and a closed emitter. One of the downsides to the closed emitter is there's more optic there. It's more weight. What is the weight difference from your EDC XL to your closed emitter optic?
Those are numbers that I don't pay attention to as much because I pay attention to other more poignant numbers. But if I had to guess, I would say it's probably measured in, you know, we measure optics in grams, and I forget how many grams it weighs, but I would say that the enclosed emitter is probably 25 to 30% more weight.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about 2 ounces versus 1.5 ounces, or maybe it's 2.5 or 3 ounces versus 3.5 or 4 ounces, it's very negligible. There's one extra piece of glass and a little extra housing around it. So weight shouldn't be a major concern. They'll cycle on every pistol. I haven't found a pistol. The only pistols that don't like to cycle with red dots are your newer, very light shooting 22s, the Glock 40,
sure,
5 or whatever. So you try and put red dots on 22s, and they sometimes have an issue cycling. So that's the only pistol I've ever found. I don't care how big the optic is, an SRO, an enclosed emitter, an aim point, or ours, they all cycle.
Yeah. Hey, folks, if you're jumping on right now, the live stream, Mike Seeklander here with Buck Hawley of CNH Precision. We're talking about optics selection. We're talking about optics mounting here in a second, as well as he's going to give you a peek of his new optic line. Of course, I'm also joined by Charles in the booth. I should have said hello to him earlier, aka my conscious. He's running the show here and controlling the sound and controlling all these different cameras in the studio. So shout out to him as well. If you're one of my members, please click that share button, click the like button, let folks know we're on. We're on IDPA Facebook page, Shooting Performance Facebook page, the Livefire Facebook page, probably the American Warrior site, a bunch of Facebook pages. So tell people what we're talking about. And Buck, would you take it away and talk to us about mounting an optic? And also, give kind of the principles of direct mount versus plate mount, pros and cons, what you're seeing most successful in that arena?
So we're going to start with that question first. So there's the, do I buy a pistol that is pre-cut for an optic system? SIG, Smith & Wesson, Glock, HK, Taurus, you name it, Walther. If you believe at some point that a newer, sexier, lighter, faster, some feature of an optic is going to come out at some point in the next few years, and they will, and you might be willing to take one optic off of a gun and put another one on there, then I highly recommend that you buy a pistol that comes configured from the factory with their optics cut. Now, if you're like me, and when you build a firearm, I think I have hundreds of firearms, rifles, pistols, shotguns. Once I build a firearm, it stays in that configuration forever. It ain't coming apart. If you're that guy, then I seriously suggest that you look into a direct mount system. Companies like mine, companies like Mike Parker at Agency Arms, our other favorite milling company, you send your slide to them and they cut it perfectly for the red dot that you select. I mean, it is money. That thing ain't moving, ain't wobbling, ain't nothing. If it comes off, you got bigger problems than your optic just came off your pistol. Okay?
Sure.
So now, so I prefer direct mount every day, all day, if I can. It decreases the failure point significantly. There's less screws, less things can go wrong if it's direct mounted. But
Is a direct mount typically or almost always going to be lower on the gun as well, which might be an advantage?
Because every company that makes a pistol that allows you to mount multiple optics, we're going to pick on Glock. So Glock has the MOS cut. Aaron Cowan says it's the worst optics cut ever invented. He's
Sorry,
entitled
Glock.
to his opinion. I'm not going to say he's wrong, because it was invented 9 or 10 years ago. They didn't know what they know now. And Glock, once they do things, they don't like to change much. But when you mount something to this pistol, you have to have a plate, and plates have to, there's got to be some thickness there to be able to screw down into them or to clamp onto the sides of them. So sure. If you direct mount, this is our duty sight. It has the same footprint as the Acro. If you direct mount this, it'll sit about 100 thousandths, a tenth of an inch lower than it currently sits with the plate. What that does for you, and in some instances, is that allows you to save money, time, and energy, because if you can mount it low enough by direct milling it, you can sometimes get away with using the factory sights that came on it originally. And that's something that you got to consider whenever you're putting one of these on your pistol. 80% of the time, you're going to have to upgrade these as well if you want to have some type of a co-witness in case your dot doesn't work.
Yeah, and here, folks, if you're listening and you're going to carry a handgun with an optic, my personal strong opinion is you have to have co-witness sights or some other sighting system. So if the dot fails, you could use the iron sights or at least the front sight lined up with the rear optic plate or whatever to be able to take those shots. But one more thing about that, if you look at these two different handguns, one a standard set of iron sights and one has an optic on it, a direct mount optic is probably going to put the dot closer to where the top of my front sight would have been in the rear sight notch. So the advantage there is then if I aim the standard iron sighted gun and I bring the iron sights to my eye at this height, right? And I have a direct mount optic. When I bring the gun in front of my face, the gun position is probably going to be very, very, very close to where the iron sighted position was. So there's not a positional change in terms of your arms. And that's one of the problems or one of the issues that most people have when they put an optic on a handgun, especially if it's a junky super high mount on a bad plate, is the gun is now in a different position, so they find themselves doing that dot lasso, trying to find the dot. So
Well, and here's what I will say: a word of caution. If you have a pistol that is not equipped with an optics cut, so you have a Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4 Glock that doesn't have an optics cut, and you're dipping your toe into the optics market, you're not sure if you want to do that. Please, please, please do not be the person who buys. There's several manufacturers that make a plate that slides into the dovetail.
yes.
And listen, we make one, okay? But we make them for law enforcement agencies that are running training pistols. And we just secured a foreign military contract for training pistols. They're for training. But if you're putting all of this mass, and this thing slides back and forth at like 8 or 9 or 10 Gs, that's a lot of movement, a lot of speed, right? And if you're putting all of that stress on that little bitty dovetail, that's the only thing that connects this big hunk of metal to your slide. It's not a matter of if it's going to come off, it's when it's going to come off. It's catastrophic. Aside from the fact it's going to come off is that it pushes the optic like a half an inch. You might as well just put a Picatinny rail on top of your pistol and mount it, because the thing sits like a half an inch high. That's where you really have problems with shooters.
They're way too high. And I don't know if this counts, Buck, but they look stupid. I mean, that's kind of part of the deal. You have a very well-branded product line, a well-branded boom squad. All your stuff looks good. When I see those rear sight dovetail mounted optics, I'm like, I shouldn't even say it because I don't want to. If someone's watching and you have that, please don't feel bad, but it just looks junky. So please reach out to Buck, get a good plate or whatever else solution.
Yeah, have your slide milled, or buy a pistol or acquire a pistol that uses the plate system, and you'll be squared away.
Okay, so Buck, I would like to maybe work through mounting an optic on a handgun if you would teach us all of these steps. And then after that, both with what you have there and I'm going to be unboxing some stuff, I'm going to have you walk us through your entire line of new optics, and then we'll do some Q&A. I know we have a couple questions in queues. John Rena said, I've always believed that these various companies use different mounting solutions in order to somehow create barriers to people using a different optic. Maybe so. Is there any possibility that's going to? Oh, he asked if there's any possibility ever that there's just going to be a standard mount for all optics. That'd be an interesting question to respond to. I doubt it, by the way. And by the way, I see Roger. Aloha. Wow, nice. Number 2341, Mr. Roger Avelino, welcome to the show as well. Hey, folks, if you haven't clicked share, please do. Text someone, tell them what we're talking about, because the expert, the man, the myth, the Buck, is going to show us how to mount an optic on a handgun.
Okay. So without further ado.
Okay, I'm gonna do this with you. Okay, go ahead. Maybe. Oh, wow.
How would you like to have one of those, Mike?
I don't know. What is that, man? Is that like the new Glock that I haven't heard about?
Oh, did I show this too early?
Maybe.
This could be a Glock 12 gauge. Now, so this is it's not a Glock 12 gauge. We're not going to start any internet moves. April 1st is long since gone, but this is a training aid that we actually make. It's made out of aluminum. And this is how we allow our rep groups and our sales guys to teach people how to put optics on. So this is a 2X Glock slide. Everything is per the specification per Glock, but it's 2 times bigger. And here is our plate.
Wow, that's a big plate.
And here is the secret sauce to our whole thing, and this is called a T-nut. Now, you might say, well, why
T-nut, okay.
version 4? I'm going to quickly tell you how we got to version 4 of our plate. Version 1 of our plate was essentially a blatant copy of the Glock 1 because I was asked to make a blatant copy of it. Version 2, I figured out that if I made the plate wider, then you didn't need a ceiling plate underneath an RMR. Okay, good. So version 3, but we were still having issues because this plate is 100 thousandths thick native when it's on a standard size slide. This was 200 thousandths thick because it's twice as big. And when you put this plate on, now when you screw down through your optic, when you put the screws through the optic into the plate, the max amount of thread engagement you can get is 100 thousandths deep into the plate. Okay? Well, on a 632 screw that has a nominal dimension of about 138 thousandths, in the mechanical engineering school of joints and fasteners, you would have learned that if you're going to put a screw to fasten 2 pieces together, you should have 1x, ideally 1.5x the size of the screw in threads. So if you have a 632 screw that's, the light just went out. If you have a 632 screw with a dimension of 138 thousandths, you should screw down into your mounting surface 138 thousandths, but Glock only gave you 100. So as I was sitting there one day, I said, how do I keep the plate thickness the same thickness, but how do I add thread engagement? I came up with what is commonly referred to as a ZEV post when it's machined on a slide, a little post that sticks up and it's threaded. That's patented by ZEV. And if it's on a slide, it's patented and you have to pay them to use it. But I said, what if I put that post on a plate? That was version 3. But I was too anxious to hurry up and get it to market, and I failed to secure a patent on putting a post on a plate. Well, then what happened was I had a plate that had posts that stuck up off of it that gave you the additional thread necessary to hold your optic on there. But then what was happening was people were over torquing them and breaking the posts off, or they'd shear them off somehow, putting it on, taking it off. And then you had to throw the entire plate away. So that's bad for business. I had to send them a whole new plate. I said, how do I fix the problem of them breaking the posts off? I said, why don't I make the posts removable? So there's a T-nut. And I got the idea. I'm not afraid to say it. It's the Magpul M-Lock little nut that they use on the back side. That's where the idea came from. Take their nut, put it with a plate, put it on a pistol, and now look at all that thread engagement you have. So now when you take your optic and you put it on there and you screw it down, it'll stay on there. That's patented. Okay. So let's get into the mounting technique. So you need a couple things.
Okay.
You have to have some kind of torque limiter. Okay. Especially for everybody, even you, Mike, as good of a gunfighter as you are, shooter, you do not have calibrated wrists. Okay. There's
well,
no way.
Hold on, Buck.
You can't
That's
tell
about
me
1.2 pounds right there. So I'm pretty calibrated, man.
Perfect.
And by the way, I was born with the ability to put an optic on a handgun intuitively because I'm a shooter. Isn't that what you hear all the time? I intuitively know how to do something without following the instructions.
I've been doing this since I was 3. I've been shooting since I was 6.
Yeah.
Better yet, I was in the military.
That makes you an expert.
But better yet, I was in the military and now I'm a cop.
Yeah, so, even more of an expert.
When I went through the academy, they didn't teach me shit about a wrench or a torque limiter. Nothing. So you have to have some type of a torque limiter. We sell them. This is a variable one. It goes from 5 inch-pounds up to 25 or 30. That's all you need. There are some of them. The yellow one, we get these from Fit Stitch. That's a 10 inch-pound limiter. You need a torque limiter, okay? Next, you need a little handy-dandy bottle of acetone, fingernail polish remover, something to clean grease and debris off of screws and out of the holes on your Glock. Because if you've ever taken the cover plate off your Glock, it's slathered in oil from the factory. So you got to be able to clean it up. Then you need a thread locker compound, okay? So we have something that's called 243. Why? Because it's essentially the same as some other company in a very similar bottle, except it's made by C&H, and it's called Optic Locker. This is essentially blue Loctite, okay?
Okay.
Now, if you really want to go crazy, you can get the red 263. I do not suggest it. However, some of the top federal agency law enforcement guys do use red because they can't ever afford to have a screw come loose. Now, here's the risk that you run. You need to be prepared that when you want to get your optic off to change your battery, let's just say there's a law enforcement agency that made a high value target arrest earlier. This is some espionage act stuff. Okay, those kind of guys, they're red Loctiting their optic onto their pistol because they cannot afford a life or death situation for an optic to come off. But because we sell them plates, but we sell them we give them 4 sets of replacement hardware. So every year when they turn their pistol in and the armorer takes their optic off, those screws and those T-nuts, all the mounting hardware goes in the trash and they start over. Huh. If you were going to use red Loctite, the only way to get those off without stripping the head is that, I don't have one here, but you have to have a soldering iron with a sharp tip. And then what you do is just for instructional purposes only, we're going to pretend like this is the tip of a soldering iron. You're going to take that tip, you're going to heat it up, and then you stick it down into the T10 head of that screw and you let it heat up for about 15 to 20 seconds. That heat goes down the barrel of the screw. It loosens up the red Loctite or the blue Loctite, and then you can ease them out, and then you throw them away and you start over. With blue Loctite, you can typically break the blue Loctite loose and reuse the screws. I always suggest that you buy new screws and start over. So let's get back to
I want to make sure I heard that. So let me ask you a question, Buck, not to interrupt. So let's say I am a serious competitor, or you're a serious defender, maybe a civilian that carries a handgun, or maybe you're in a 3-letter federal agency. Did I hear this correctly? It might be a very smart idea, maybe on a yearly basis, to take your optic all the way off and replace all of the mounting hardware, the T-nuts, the screws, replace your Loctite. Right?
I don't recommend that you do it for GP. Okay. If you're a serious user, you're a IDPA shooter, USPSA. If you're anybody that puts 5,000 to 10,000 rounds through your gun a year, yes. Okay. If you're a casual shooter guy and you're shooting 1,000 to 2,000 rounds a year, you're probably never going to have to change your screws. But if you shoot an RMR, for example, and you have to take it off to change your battery, you should change your screws as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
All right,
let's
so walk us through mounting. You've already showed us the plate and the design, so okay.
acetone. Okay.
Yep.
You're going to take acetone. There won't be a plate on it. It'll look just like this. And you squirt it down. You squirt it inside these mounting holes. Dust, debris, oil, gunk, stuff gets in there, okay? Take some compressed air. For training purposes only, I'm going to pretend like this is a compressed air now. Blow it off. Blow all off, okay? You take your screws and your T-nuts. Your screws and your T-nuts. And you douse those. Get them all clean. Let them air dry or blow them off with some compressed air. Now, everything that you're about to mount is debris-free, oil-free. You're good to go, okay? Now, you're going to take your plate with its T-nuts and you're going to put it on. I'm going to leave the T-nuts off because it's easier, okay? So you're going to put the plate on, and then you're going to take the screws that come to mount your plate. Our screws come with blue Loctite already painted on them. I still encourage you to use a little drop of liquid blue Loctite. You put the screws down into the slide. You take your torque wrench and you screw them down until the prescribed torque value, 10 to 12 inch-pounds. And this thing will go click, click, click. Now your plate is mounted to your gun. Now, you take your red dot, put it on your slide. You put the screws, the clean screws, you put a little dab of red or blue Loctite on them, put them through there. Again, you take your calibrated torque wrench, screw it down, click, 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 and now it's mounted. Now what you do is you take this guy, you put him over here, and you grab this. You have one of these. Leave the pistol alone
Right.
for 24 hours. If you read the directions on Loctite or Optic locker that we sell, any of the premier brands of thread lockers, they need time to set. If you take this on, you get this from your armor, and you walk out of the armory, and you walk out into the 25-yard pistol bay, it will probably stay, but you're not giving it time to set properly. So let it set up if you're using the liquid thread locking compound. If you follow those procedures,
you're getting to my question.
Okay. All right. So what are these, people ask? Well, these are, my mind just went blank. These are liquid paint markers. Now, in my government days, we literally used fingernail polish. Mm-hmm. If anybody was going anywhere, they would take fingernail polish, because we didn't have sexy, expensive markers like this with the little felt tips. But you could always get black fingernail polish. Every screw on that gun, precision rifle. You know how catastrophic it is to get off an airplane somewhere and you grab your precision rifle and your optic goes like this? It's bad. And I have traveled the world shooting precision rifles. The absolute worst environment for any firearm to wiggle screws loose is in a rifle case in the bed of a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Airplanes don't really bother them too much. I don't know why. But a pickup truck, an F-250 driving down the road, or a Hilux or whatever, man, screws just come loose. You'll get off, you'll take your gun out, you think it's ready to go, and your screws, your scope's loose. Same with pistols. Yeah. So what we do with this is a black one, and this is an extra safety measure. This is not required, but I highly recommend it. The black one, you take the black one, and here's a scope mount, new product. So you take this black one, take the top off of it. This would normally be black as a brand new one. But when you get this full of lacquer paint, you go around the edge of the screw and you fill it in. I mean, that's just gooed in there, right? Then you take your finger or paper towel and you wipe it off and you let it dry, okay? Now what's happening is you've got this screw head, right? and then you've got the hole that's surrounding it. Basically, you're filling in that hole with black lacquer paint. It's an extra measure of precaution. Now, okay, that one probably makes sense. Why the blue one? Well, in the military and law enforcement, we call it a witness mark. So I like to use blue because it's not an obscure color like white or orange. It doesn't catch your eye. But the blue one, and you'll notice this one's got a super fine tip. Shake that one up. And what you're going to do is, now just for instructional purposes, I drew a line.
Sure.
Well, I'm going to draw that line over the top from one side of the body of the optic over the top of the screw to the other side. It's very easy. I'm shooting. Oh, look at that.
Yes.
Okay. It's very easy as you're doing reloads, holster check, brass check. Good. Oh, good. I'm good to go. My screws are lined up. Brass check, good to go. Reholster, I'm ready to roll. But if you're shooting a sequence, you're 3/4 of the way through a day, and you're doing your checks, and you look, and one screw looks like it's not in line anymore, guess what? You got a problem. You better tighten that sucker up. Otherwise, this dude will come off at a rapid rate of speed and whack you in the forehead like you've had the experience of.
I've had that experience twice. And the funny thing is I actually have an optic that has co-witness mounts on it that did have a screw coming out recently at a class. And I looked down and I'm like, oh my gosh, that screw is off the co-witness mark. And I went and got a tool and cranked it down and probably saved myself the third time I'd be hit in the face with an optic. So folks, by the way, if you're just joining us, Mike Seeklander, joined by Buck of CNH Precision, we're talking about optic selection as well as mounting. Buck just kind of went through the entire process of mounting an optic to a firearm. And there's some steps actually that he mentioned that I can't follow. My intention was to mount one of my optics today, and I realized I need to get some acetone, and I probably have the wrong Loctite. I probably need to get a bottle of that fancy stuff that you have as well. And folks, if you have a question, please throw it up there. Eric Mejia, I see your comment, says excellent experience-based tips. Rodney Clark says, so in other words, just follow the directions of the manufacturer, LOL. And I love that question as well. So if you have a question, throw it up in the comments and we'll highlight it and address it. And Buck, since you've talked about mounting an optic, I actually unboxed the optics that you sent me that I'll be putting on various guns. Let's talk about those optics real quick, unless you want to talk about anything else in terms of mounting the optic.
Yeah, let's get into optics.
Okay, so the first thing I want you to talk real briefly about, and by the way, we're almost an hour in, so we'll be cutting this here in just a few minutes, so not a ton of time, but I wanted to show these off. So this, I believe, is a pair of optics. They're pretty much identical. Looks like this is probably the EDC and the EDC XL.
I can't see them as close up as you have them, but if they look the same and one's slightly bigger, then one's an EDC and one's an EDC XL, which is the comparable. Again, I'm not afraid to say names. The small one's comparable. It's an RMSC footprint. So the Romeo Zero, the 407K, 507K. There's a couple other people that make the RMSC footprint ones. And then the slightly larger one is the same footprint, same size, a little bit larger window than an RMR, about the same size as a Holosun 507C.
So tell them about a few things. Number one, if you were to have unboxed one of these optics with me today, folks, you would have the optic here. You can see there are 2 wrenches. There are a variety of screws. The optic itself, the battery, and everything is inside the box that you're going to need. But these appear to be single-piece aluminum housing. Am I correct there? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the bodies are 70-75. It's a everybody likes to call every aluminum that everybody uses aircraft grade, but there's a structural integrity of using 70-75 versus 60-61. So we use a little bit more expensive, a little bit stronger aluminum for the bodies. What we've done, what we pride ourselves in, is we've taken the time, all of the lessons learned over the last 8 years. We're the plate guy. So we're kind of agnostic. We're just trying to help you mount your optics. So we hear about everybody's warts, everybody's problems, everybody's wish list. And we took those and we cataloged those for literally 8 years. And when we said we're going to come out with our own line of optics, I dug back in there, my brain housing group, and figured out what did people like and what did people not like, and what did they want fixed. You know, the features are, it's as big a window as we can get out or can get away with a design, the window size and the housing to maximize the protection of the glass. If the glass isn't there, the glass breaks, it's jacked.
Sure.
Everybody wants a side battery, because if you have a side battery, you don't have to take it off and change any screws. I mean, it's just the way it is. Now they become a little bit thicker, but we've figured some things out there. So a side battery, a strong housing, a 3 MOA dot. And then what we did on every single optic, if you can see back there, is that we put a rear notch. So say you're shooting a Glock MOS and your rear sight walks, which sometimes they do, or it comes off, you still have a rear notch that's machined into your optic body on every sight that we make, including our enclosed, which is innovative on our enclosed. Nobody makes an enclosed optic with a built-in rear sight in the back window. We do. So we built the same footprints and same sizes that everybody likes. The RMSC footprint, the RMI size and shape, and enclosed. And then what we did was we said, how do we negate everybody that the difficulty is? You go buy an HK VP9, okay? Then you buy your optic. Guess what? You get home and they don't go together. You did not know that they needed a plate. So now you got to search around the internet. You'll eventually find us or another supplier that makes plates, and you buy the plate, and then you're pissed. You're stewing for 3 or 4 or 5 days waiting for this plate to show up. I said, we're the biggest manufacturer of plates in the world. We're the premier brand. How do we put ourselves out of business? Well, we're making direct mount optics. You don't need a plate to put our optic on an HK, on a SIG, on a Taurus, on a Walther, on a Smith & Wesson M&P, or on a Glock. No plates required. Now, if you want the standard trio, the acro footprint one, we make a plate and you can put that one on there. If you want a huge window, well, you're going to end up with a huge window and a plate. This is our competition. We named it the comp for competition, so you knew it was technically probably for comp, but you can use it for anything. And our enclosed one is called the duty, because we highly encourage duty officers or duty people to use that. So we didn't want to screw with people in their naming conventions. There's 3 different kinds. There's an EDC, there's a green, and there's a comp. Pretty easy.
Yeah, folks. And by the way, a couple of questions. Let's highlight those. With old guns not cut for a red dot, does the frame need to be modified for a red dot mounting?
The frame, no.
Yeah.
No. I can't recall a single pistol where the frame would need to be modified if you cut the slide for a red dot. So the answer 99% of the time is no.
Okay. And we have a question from Colin. It looks like it's probably a customer service question. He says, what's the return process with C&H? You can address that briefly if you want to, Buck, but we'll probably tell Colin to contact the company. We'll put a contact information up there as well. Any other questions that I'm missing? I don't see anything else up there. So Buck, tell everybody where they can learn more about your company, get a plate for an optic, check out these fantastic optics, and learn more about what you're doing.
I highly encourage people to go to our website, chpws.com, Charlie Hotel Papa Whiskey Sierra.com. Find us on Instagram. You are not going to find me on social media virtually anywhere. I do have an Instagram page, but I post personal pictures of my travel and hunting trips. Nothing business. I have customer service people that handle all that. They're way more tolerant of weird questions than I am. And if there's ever a knock against me, it's that I don't put up with people's bullshit. I'm sorry. It's just my personality. I'll live with my customer service people will deal with your questions. I don't want to deal with them. I just want to sit in my cave hunting. I'm leaving for Alaska to go hunting, or in Africa, or wherever I am. That's where I think about new products and how to fix things. We've gotten beat up in the past on we've had quality issues. We're a growing company. That's part of what I talked about earlier. We had some growing issues and some pains in quality. Nobody spends more money trying to fix problems than I do. We have a full complement of customer service people. We have a full customer complement in quality and engineering. And those people, I'll tell you what, if you don't think that we did a good job, give me a chance to fix it. Call my people because they will help you. However, my number one rule is don't be a dick. Because if you're a dick,
I agree completely.
and somebody here can equally be a dick, and that's how things get out of control on social media. He was a dick to me. Well, nobody heard the first part of the conversation when you were talking down or punching down to some 18-year-old who's over there doing his dead level best to answer your question. So, again, call customer service. They'll help you out. If you got a personal request, there's several ways to reach me. It might take some time because I sometimes don't answer my phone for days at a time. So
there you have it, folks. The golden rule. Don't be a dick, right? So, folks, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about optic selection, dot size, dot brightness, stuff like that. Buck literally walked us through the mounting process of any optic, and I can tell you, he has some fantastic videos online on his website. So if you bought one of the optics and you want to rewatch that or didn't see some of the detail on this live stream, please go to their website and check that out. Please give them a follow on Instagram. Make sure you follow along. You'll see a lot of their new products. Check out their website as well. And if you need something, check it out. And if you're looking for an optic, if you are in the market for an optic, I can tell you I've been running Buck's plates forever and his systems forever. And when he builds something, he builds it with quality. Now, I have not shot these on my handguns yet, so I can't tell you and give Mike Seeklander's permanent stamp of approval yet. But I promise, once I get these optics mounted on these guns and put a few thousand rounds through them, I will, because the man makes fantastic stuff. Mr. Buck, any closing comments from you before we end the live stream?
Well, I'll just give you one parting shot. If you're trying to decide on what kind of an optic to buy, I really think that you should give our optics a serious look. Yeah, you might end up with a Trijicon or a Holosun or a Leopold, one of the premier names, Vortex, all of them make good optics. But I'll tell you what, we set out with pure determination to make the best, most highest quality optic on the planet. Every single optic that leaves our factory gets put on a test fixture and gets 500 simulated cycles on a pistol before it gets taken off and function checked to make sure it's good to go. You're not gonna get an optic and put a battery in it and say, "Oh my God, it didn't turn on." That's not gonna happen. Our second,
and if the man says he's going to make something high quality, trust me, he will make something high quality.
Our second purpose in getting into the red dot market was, my purpose in life is to needle other big companies. There are big companies out there that are ratcheting the prices up for for you, the consumer. Okay, I am one of you. I am not a corporate weenie. I do not have an MBA. I think that you should get a great warranty, great customer service, a great product at an affordable price. So every one of our optics, this optic that's just as big as a DPP or an SRO is going to be 20 to 25% less than both of those. Same performance or better performance. I am here for the blue collar worker dude. Yeah, I might be wearing a blue jacket from the Masters because I was given free tickets. So I am here to support you, the blue collar worker dude, the general dude who's pushing a black and white and has kids and can't afford a $600 optic. How do I shoot IDPA or USPSA? I want a big optic. This one. Boom.
There you go, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, folks. Please Check out their website. Check out those optics as well as plate mounting solutions. Trust me, if you need it done, they can do it. I have multiple mounting solutions and plates with my guns. Fantastic company. So give them a check out and a follow on Instagram, folks. And until then, train hard.